Mr. Jensen, let me just make a comment and then ask you some questions. As I said in my opening statements, I strongly believe the Federal Government has a major responsibility to effectively communicate and be transparent with the public. And I understand that within the Department of Homeland Security there are some issues that have to be kept closer to the chest in terms of protecting our ability to secure the nation and the safety of its citizens. But having said that, I want to ask you a little bit about how it is that the Department's headquarters coordinates at component level offices, because I think this is where I see the breakdown occurring. For example, the ICE detainee release. And for CBP, for example, I thought misplaced email, which was given to the reporter by someone in the Department who obviously didn't like the tone that it was establishing. So how does the Department headquarters coordinate with component level offices to ensure continuity of messaging, and who has the final say in the component or headquarters on what will be disseminated to the public? How does the flow of communication work within the Department?
Thank you for that question, Ranking Member Barber. There are multiple ways that we coordinate on a daily tactical level. We have calls with all the component media offices in which we're sharing what's going to go out that day, what events are happening, and what are the expected press releases. On a longer range basis, we look in terms of strategic communication, strategic planning, and we try to look out weeks, months in advance to see what's coming up. Many times we do know what's coming up because we're the ones who are pushing the new policies and are working on the messaging for that. And in terms of how the components work, okay, most of the subject matter experts in the programs that are being operational are at the component level. So they're putting together the first talking points, public affairs guidance, and the plans that are going to go out, and then that floats up to the headquarters where we review it. And what we're trying to review for is making sure that it's consistent with what our headquarters policy is, because the policy is for the entire department, and making sure that the messaging is consistent. And the final say does come from the headquarters in terms of the Assistant Secretary for Public Affairs, which doesn't mean that that's the end. I mean, if there is a disagreement, I guarantee you that the administrators of the different components will speak up and raise the issue, and there's been discussions about how we do things. One of the things that I think is important to note is that, and I think you kind of bring it up in terms of policies and procedures and standard operating procedures. That again, that was one of the reasons I was brought into FEMA. When I first came to FEMA, was to put those SOPs in place. I'm trying to do the same thing at the headquarters in terms of our training of all of our component public affairs office. There does not exist now a DHS-wide training strategy. I'm putting that together along with the DHS Public Affairs Workforce Development Plan so that we actually know how many public affairs officers we have, what skill levels, what do they need to be able to do, and that training strategy along with the recruiting, retention, and leadership development plan are going to be part of that. Again, it doesn't exist now. We're working on that. I have a group that includes senior representatives from all the components to come together and have a say and have input. Another way that we're trying to do things is many of our issues go across the department. So, for example, cybersecurity. Every component has a little piece of that. So many times a component might be focused on one program, and we need to make sure that whatever they're saying fits what the entire department is doing. So to do that, we created a cross-department steering committee that has representatives, both policy and subject matter experts, as well as communicators, to create a one DHS communication strategy for cybersecurity. That way, all of the components have that. They have a starting point, which doesn't mean that that's the only thing people can say, but it's a starting point, and it's a common messaging across the department. We probably need to do a lot more of that. That's one of the things that we're seeing as we mature the agency.
I appreciate that. It sounds like very important and hopefully successful steps are being taken. And from what I've seen, and I think most of us would agree with this, what was done in FEMA was really an exceptional piece of work, and progress was made there in terms of communicating effectively at a time when people really need it more than just about any other time. So I wish you success with bringing the same kind of coordinated and rapid communication and messaging to the public. FEMA is a great example of how it works, You've said, I think, your department responsible for the protocols agency-wide now?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Let me turn to Ms. Kessler. And first of all, I want to commend you and your office for what it's trying to do and what it's doing, actually, to engage with minority groups that otherwise might be treated poorly, I think, at local level or sometimes at a national level. We don't need to demonize people because of the actions of extremists that might be part of that general community, and I appreciate what you're doing. TSA has a program where 2,800 staff are involved, I believe, in airports scanning, screening of people. They kind of float around, I'm told, and they're essentially, it seems to me, profiling. I don't know if there's a better word to describe it, to pick out people who might be suspicious. How does the work of your office intersect or interact or coordinate with that? And isn't it somewhat at cross purposes?
Well, the program is actually the behavioral detection officers, and it's called the SPOT program. And my office has been very involved in ensuring that the way that the officers are trained is appropriate, that the factors that they have a sort of a point system, that the factors that trigger suspicion are appropriate, that they're not based on race or ethnicity, that they're based on behaviors, suspicious behaviors, and not who you are, but how you're acting. So we've had quite a bit of oversight on that program, including revamping their policies, helping TSA to revamp their policies, and currently helping them to revamp the training. There was an incident in Boston, as you know, it was reported in the New York Times about some of the actual officers up there complaining, and that is under investigation by the Inspector General, currently under investigation still. But we've been working in the meantime at the Secretary's request to ensure that the program is very carefully structured with a lot of oversight.
Well, I hadn't appreciated until you said it that your office is working to help train those officers, and I think that's well taken. And I just want to say in closing, and we'll hopefully have a second round for other questions, that I really commend the Department for how it has handled communication with the public. In natural disasters, Sandy worked very well, Boston bombing very well. I just want to make sure that we apply those approaches and those techniques and that coordination to the day-to-day communication with the public. We should never have found out about the detainee release from the newspapers. We should never have found out as members of Congress about the proposed knife policy on airlines from the media. I mean, these things have to be improved. Personally, I want to see the Department succeed. I very much believe in its mission, particularly the border security and customs piece of it. And you need to work more closely with us to make sure that we are armed with the information we need to be proactive and effective in supporting the men and women who do this difficult job. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.